time you play it again, the engine's oh my god, it feels amazing. It feels amazing, doesn't it? Like, I'm not nostalgic remembering it.
Everything is just so crisp. Everything like everything just feels like to the millisecond. Like when you press keys, like everything is instantaneous, and like the recoil, the like everything just feels so good in that game. And I mean, obviously, like for me, a big part of it is that I just suck at CS:GO, at least relative to that. But like, it just feels more precise.
Yes. What about if we go the other way though? What great 1.6 players do you think? I already gave Ruik not a bad call. Who's some other good 1.6 pros who you think like their game would just be? It might be even better in CS:GO if we think of their strengths. Like who are people who play aggressively or use pistols or whatever? Who would you pick out that you think you'd put over?
Someone who's not going to be like a super incredibly well-known or popular player, but I think would have been super good if he just started playing instantly basic. I think he was like a very aggressive, like entry type player who's versatile, could play with up and everything else. Is like very smart player as well. He started playing poker at the end of 1.6, so then like he made like a bit of a comeback like 2 years later. But it was I think he's someone whose skills would have been really great. Having just transferred over. The fact that he's also one of the guys who gave it a go and played a couple months and just didn't know himself and thought he had other options and he wasn't forced to play, so he just didn't. Let me think for a second just to see who else would have been. The problem is that who they would have been at some point. Seems to make everything much bigger and everybody started getting paid lots of money, etc. And that like kind of alters how you would think about it. So I think you'd have to go back a couple more years. But I think MJE, if he could have continued from like the NCW days without ever going anywhere, I think his style could have been pretty good. He was pretty aggressive and he had good aim. He has like a normal professional career too now. And
people don't know.
I think in this like could have been like the Zipniks, but I think better actually.
Fire in the hole.
Sure.
Throwing
people don't know Energy was a player for the NCW team with Wimp and Avon, Sonic and all those guys. One of the things about his style of play was, I mean, Lopez himself, it took a lot of years before that guy. He had to get a lot of accomplishments before anyone respected him, because basically, his style of play, remember, this is a game where you aren't rewarded for Stu2K style play. Everyone used to just think of him like Stu2K in the early days. You know when everyone hated him before he was a pro player? Because he was like the annoying kid that just does some bullshit push that you think, that would never work on LAN, you fucking arsehole. Like, I'm trying to practice the game, you're doing shit like that in scrims. That's what that MG guy, that's why everyone first thought he cheated. Then thought it was an onliner, and then eventually just had to admit when he won everything, like, I guess he's good then. Like, it was kind of like Stu2K in that sense. That's a good shout, actually. It's more of like a niche pick, but I can see why you went with it.
Yeah, I think that's someone. Outside of that, I think like 2007-ish instead of like the later years of his career when I assumed that he was spending more time playing poker than.
Actually, I'll echo that.
He would have been good.
Yeah, one reason I would echo that is because, first of all, even though back then it wasn't really a term, like, considering DSN was a primary AWP if he had the AWP, he could definitely be a hybrid, he had good rifles as well. So first of all, that would suit CSGO, where, like, newsflash, you don't get the AWP every fucking round, especially if you cost your economy 24/7. And then secondly, he was also someone where the type of AWPers I think actually would the best transition aren't the people where they just shoot
flashbang.
He wanted Markov to all. You know why he originally, like, that comes from a real person. His style of AWPing looks like what CSGO AWPing is, where you just fire as fast as possible. Like, he just used to do that. That's why we always speculate it was like psychological or motivation reasons that made him.
Remember, he had that one tournament in Navi, that Mad Cats, I think Vienna was the tournament where they played varied games and it was like quad OT or something, and he was amazing. But that was like the one time, and then 2 months later they lost that Prague tournament to the mixed team, and then that team just died. Another teammate from that team, by the way, I think Dux would have been really good. Like, his style would have been like perfect for CS:GO. These guys were over, roughly at their peak, give or take, as opposed to however many number of years it actually took them to
Yeah, he was also, like, I actually did an article, like, maybe 5 years ago now, where I tried to do this topic, like, early in the game, and actually, on my top 10, it was like a top 10 players who would have been good at CSGO or whatever, like, I think Rui was like almost number 1, because I just thought, like, dude, your style of play, like, people wouldn't even say you play wrong, they just say you're just the best. So similarly, I think Gox was like top 5 in my list or something, because for the same reason. This was a guy where, especially in Swedish teams, where again, Nordic teams in general, you're not really supposed to play salvage, like you're supposed to play for the team. That Gox guy, I've always told the story because the one that actually Khan said, I think he even said it in either an interview or on that podcast we used to do. He once said, because again, where like you just, what you always do with in-game leaders is you just whine about things that their teammates do that they finally get a chance to air a grievance about, because everyone except in-game leaders doesn't know what the fuck you're talking about. So a famous thing he told as an anecdote was that I said to him, dude, why do even some of the best players in the world basically never use the terrain to their advantage? So like if they have the bomb down in a 1v1 and they're the T, some of them just peek into the 1v1. It's like, yeah, I get it that you're going to kill him if you're really skilled, but you know you could just win that like 99% if you backwards around a box that he doesn't know you're hiding behind. Basically what Zipnix does in CSGO. So here's the thing. Khan tried to reason with Gox about this, because Gox basically had like the skills of Forrest, but then was too aggressive. He went too far on like the I can just take every dual angle, because he was a skilled player, so he just thought like, well, whatever. And so Khan basically said to him, trying to explain what I just described, he said, listen, you're really good, so I get it. If you take that 1v1 duel just to gun away the round, you might win it 70% of the time. Like, he was being generous, you know. And Gox goes, nah, I think it'd be more like 95%. And then Khan obviously just just got a discussion to star players, like, because obviously, by the way, I'm going to tell everyone to spoil it. I think Khan was probably being generous, saying 70%. Like, if I think how close like good aim is, it's probably more like 55 or like 60% that they win that 1v1. Whereas in the case Khan's making, he probably 80% of the time win the 1v1. You just play it smart, and God could actually play it smart if he wanted to. But yeah, like, that's just how delusional fraggers are in a way. Like, he was like a J.R. Smith like that. Like, I'm sure if you ask J.R. Smith, he probably thinks he hits like 50% fucking 3-pointers, doesn't he? Like, he just thinks that. Really, the games I didn't, I just, you know, like.
There's a famous Twitter story among like old people in Fantasy, and so like Naltu would know this. There was a CPL, I think winter 2004, when Quid was playing with Astralis. They played NIP on Inferno. That was the team when like Heaton and Potty came back and made the new SK. NIP with like, I think Bilden might have been on that.
Okay, 2005.
Yeah, 2005. And there was a round when the game was something like 11-11. Astralis was on the T side, like was gonna be set with money. He had a one-on-one against Potty, and he was a B side of Inferno. Had planted the bomb, was by triple box. There's like 15 seconds left on the bomb, something like that. So Potty's like all the way back in spawn. He's kind of just looking, and it's like clear if you're watching on HL TV that he's already decided to save, and he's just trying to see if he can get an exit. So what does Ruben do? He waits 2 seconds, and he swings out, commits to the peak, loses the duel, and Potty uses Astralis broke, they say they lose the game. And that's like the one round that we've always used as an example, saying like, listen, dude, like, if I just pull your like, you know, he's not gonna straight defuse very often. There's a lot of rounds where like you literally just hide because there's not enough rounds, but you unplug your keyboard and you win. And a lot of players will go to the peak, but that's just it is admittedly like like you'd rather losing an aim fight than lose because you just don't even peek. But like a lot of people will just lose rounds where they literally could have just gone away, gone away from their keyboard. But that's like a funny example because it's the same exact player with like, you know, that's a pretty brutal loss. Like that was I think that was the last tournament, not the last tournament. It's like a couple of tournaments after that. That Australia's team died, and then we built turned out to be the best 50 team of all time because he left that team.
Indeed. No, I mean, the funny thing is, when you say that, like, that's also just like, here's the problem, right? When you come up with a principle in CS, people don't get this. Like, just being a nerd isn't enough. You've got to have like a catchy way to say it. So like, that is the best like way to evocatively phrase that. It's like, rounds that you win if you unplug the keyboard. And the game you might lose. Like, it's the perfect way to describe it to get the point through to someone. Because I've seen some of those in CS:GO where someone with like 2 seconds left is a CT when the guy isn't going to get the bomb down, just peeks out and dies.
Isawa.
I just think like, how would I even psychologically keep together after laying down? Like, it'd be so hard in that scenario, wouldn't it? Like, dude, if you just, again, if you do, why are you peeking?
Yeah.
What about one thing I want to ask along those lines with comparing like the great players, etc., is this is where I'll actually go the other way and give a lot of credit to some of the great CS:GO players. I tell you what, one thing I never thought we'd see in CS:GO, and it's why when Get Right was the best for the first year or so, and Kenny S was sick at time, it's why I used to think those guys truly were like unbelievable, is CS:GO was also an insanely hard game to be consistent. I used to literally have like 600 spams and every time we were the best. In 1.6, that was, like I said, if you were a true god of the game, like a Mount Rushmore guy, that was standard. Like, if you were Neo, it's expected you were not only going to be the best on your team, that goes up. You better be probably the best player in the tournament. I tell you what, that's where this modern crop, like I said, Nico and Zebu, they have impressed me, because holy shit, is amazing.
I think Zyme is the biggest outlier to be that, because like they're not that good when you watch them. Yes. They don't appear to be that good. They don't have that, like, they were really good last year for a portion of the time. Like, they don't even play that high. They just have close games against everybody because they're, you know, he's very good. And like you look at his games and like he just doesn't have like he just gets kills. He doesn't miss easy kills and he gets a lot of kills he shouldn't have gotten. Like, it's just super impressive how consistent he can be throughout the games. You know, like, I can speak from my experience where like you'd have tournaments where, you know, maybe you didn't get the right amount of play time in before or whatever, you don't feel that good. And sometimes even if you played a lot, you still sometimes like don't feel that good and like you're just feeling it for whatever reason. And like I've seen that happen to just about everybody. But like some of these guys, like they're there every single round. It's almost like they just don't mess up at all. Like they get all the kills every round. It's not even like, you know, you have a bad match here and there. You have, you know, one bad tournament here and there. And it's not even because they're just super passive and they have such a style that, you know, gives them a little extra comfort and makes it a little bit easier. But then, like, some of these guys are, like, simple. Like, he's just reckless, like you said, and he still pulls it up. It's super impressive. I mean, I think that's, like, I do wonder, like, how much of that is just the fact that people are just more talented today. Like, maybe the players are just, like, they just have better hand-eye coordination than players back then. I think a portion has to be that. But at the same time, you know, like I don't know what variance in that. Put it another way, like if everybody's hand-eye coordination gets better identically, then it makes no difference. So actually what you need is for you to be an even bigger outlier today than you did 10 years ago to look similarly good, which is the more impressive part if you think about it that way.
Yeah, that's what makes Simple just so bonkers, isn't it? It's like, even in a world where there's like, especially because now we've developed all these global scenes so much, so you have all these players like Nico from Bosnia, who by the way never would have been seen in 1.6. He would have sadly been like fucking, the example is Oscar. Like, we would have only heard of him from the fragment being gone, seems pretty good, Shim will never see him on the international stage or lose in the first round. So to be fair, we never would have had a guy like him in 1.6, but when you have us developed a scene, the idea that you can then put the gap between you and everyone else that Simple did in 2018 is ridiculous. Like, the best example ever I said then is the way I knew that Simple had broken CS:GO. It's because it's not that I thought he was the best, because I thought players in the past were the best who people disagreed with. It's when even all the fans, and even HLTV.org, which famously didn't used to give MVPs to people who weren't in the winning team. It's when even though Device won the most MVPs of the year, everyone agreed he's not the best player of the year. And I was like, dude, in 1.6, if you win every tournament of the year and you're the MVP every time, we don't even need the discussion. It's like you will just get that. Everyone will say this was your year, you were the best. But like the idea that Device had it twice, where 2 years he won all majors almost, like he had tons of MVPs, and at the end of the year everyone was like, that's cool, Device, but excuse me, we're just going to go and jerk off right now. That just shows how the game has to come back skill.
I mean, that's the difference between being most valuable and just being the best in a team environment, right? Like, it's hard to be the most valuable when you're not winning. You just have to be that much better, have no one out of the winning team. Otherwise, by definition, you know, you're doing more towards beating towards a second place, for example. But like, some of these guys, they're just so it's just seems impossible.
I'll also say as well, by the way, another reason why I'm with you that Zero in his own way has like a unique quality is I agree with the teammate angle. Like, if you look at the others, listen, I know Nico was at the corner of Mousebox, which arguably was way worse in terms of teammate quality, but here's the difference. If you look at the way Nico played in Nico Sports, it's no wonder he was the IGL and he even did this in phase. Like, when everyone says he frags as an IGL, let's be real, guys, it's because he doesn't really do half the fucking IGL. He just frags. Like, that's the joke, isn't it? But the joke is, the reason why he wants to do it still is so that he can do what he wants and not have someone else basically tell him the wrong route. So the problem is this. He's put himself in the positions. It's one of the reasons why I'm famously more specialist than many other people. He's played the position in the game, follow-up entry fragger, that in theory should get the most kills. That should be the best position. But the problem with being the ultimate base, like Cold Zero style, is some rounds, if you have a really good team, will be over before you get there, so you don't even get the kills. Like, they run in the site and they kill everyone, and you start Forest and Gox, and then would go in the site, kill everyone, and then get right would be like, oh well, guess the maybe I'll get a clutch round in a minute, you know. Cold Zero rather, and Zero, I would say. At least Cold Zero had god tier teammates when he baited everyone. Mate, Zero is the worst teammate, the worst team, and as you say, even though he's in a lot of hard situations, he never misses. You can't rattle him.
And they also make it deep enough in the tournaments all the time that they actually play a lot of series against the good Mouseboard's team. Like, they never made top 4.
Single door.
They did like once, during the whole time that Nico was there. So like, you know, he was like unbelievable in group stages. You know, had famously that game against Fnatic where I think 50 or something. Just like just an unbelievable talent, like very clearly. Like, you know, like you're doing that in group stages. You're, you know, everybody, like the teams that think that they're gonna beat you. Like if you're that Mouseboard's team and you're playing against, say, Fnatic at the time, like Fnatic is not staying up preparing for you. Like Fnatic's a bad example because they're not doing that against anybody. But, you know, like whoever the tough team is, like they're not worried about you. Like they know you're gonna be really good and you're gonna get yours, and they just assume that they're gonna win 16-10 anyway. So like that's the difference here. Like Vitality's good enough that they play close enough against everybody that people do that. Or, you know, they actually get to play all those series and they, you know, really prepare for them. So I think that makes it actually harder for Zybe than, for example, Nico in some of those earlier teams, just because of that. Though, admittedly, like everybody probably spent more effort on stopping Nico than Zybe, just because Vitality is more tactical.
Yes. I'd also even throw in, if we're going to contrast the games again, that's also where CSGO is different. Even though we're saying the skill level can be unbelievable and obviously people play quite abusively, I think the fact that the average CS pro plays way more reckless than 1.6 pro because just the meta of the game was different and the roles were way more defined in 1.6. Like if you're the entries, you always are the entries. You don't I'm not joking, you would rotate your entries off the site you were going to fake on and go to the other one. Whereas in CSGO, people figured out, if you can even entry 70% as good, you can do it way faster if I just tell you to go now and do the lurker, right? The difference is in 1.6 you would do like that. So as a result, even if you are the super hard carry who has like not good teammates, so like Neo's an example. I mean, listen, his teammates are way better than Nick was in Mousebox, but even so, I used to think like, dude, any championship you win compared to Forest should be worth like twice as much, mate. Look at his teammates and look at yours. The difference is, if you hard carry and you are a god in CS 1.6, you probably do win the tournament and the match. Dude, it's infamous. Obviously Simple did it and Nico did it, but it's become very infamous with these types of Ziwu. Half their career is having like the best performance of the whole tournament and losing the series. Like, I feel like in CSGO that's way more common. Like, you can hard carry individually, but you can't kind of make it work for you.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And then the other piece is like some of these guys are just from countries where, you know, Nico's the exception because he can play with international teams. Like Simple doesn't as easily fit in international teams, neither does Zybe. So like you're kind of restricted by whatever the talent pool in your country happens to do. With that said, you know, like playing against, for example, Fnatic in 2009, that's like Golden State with KD and everybody else. You know, like, that's like, you know, like some of those years, like you just have teams that you just can't really beat. And that's been Astralis something for quite a while. Was linked for a couple months last year, etc. Like that happens some of the time. So like part of it is like a bunch of like the era that you happen to be in. And then some of it is just that like, you know, you just don't have the right teammates, and in that context, it's really incredible what players do individually, regardless.
I actually think also, we'll make this maybe the last point because we have to wrap up soon, but that's even one reason why I think CSGO, because one thing I've noticed is different, mate, is in CSGO, to this day, the default way to recruit is just get the most skilled player. That it really is, to this day, still the approach. The logic is we'll just figure out a way to make it work. So Team Liquid last year is the best example ever, because as I pointed out, every single one of the 5 players had in the past been a star player of an NA team. Like, there's no such team like that in 1.6. That doesn't exist. Like, there's no team ever constructed like that. None of the great teams are like that. Like, that is so alien, because in the great 1.6 teams, right, the guy who's the support player is probably just a guy who played support his whole career. The guy who's an entry is an entry the whole career. Like, the roles were more set. So I actually feel like I'll contrast it to the NBA example you gave there, because everyone knows in the NBA now, the new approach is the same as in CSGO. You just stack superstars and you hope you have the right, like, fucking Voltron combination of superstars that you win the NBA title. Whereas I even think that's an example of where, everyone nowadays just bemoans that and says it's just greed and players don't understand what the game's about. No, it's also the changing meta of the game. Like, in a game where you shoot 1 billion times because threes have just been figured out that you can scale them up, you can now have 3 1A options that should be 1A options on other teams, on one team, like Golden State did. Whereas the difference is, you wouldn't have made a team like that in the 80s, because that guy probably is shooting 2-pointers and he's working like fucking backing someone down and taking like a 1-on-1 fight. Like, in that scenario, the other 2 people just stood watching him. It wouldn't even make sense. That team would actually be worse. So that's another area I feel like CSGO contrasts very differently. Is a lot of the game is about stacking skilled players, and then after the fact you figure out what roles are you going to do, where's he going to fit on the map, what tactics are we going to do. 1.6 I felt like was a lot more about you need the guy who can do that job, because as we said, a lot of the executes you've got to know your part perfectly. So you're not just doing it half the time.
Yeah, that's for sure, and I think we've even seen. I think the way Liquid went about their roster changes, they dropped the player who had the least individual skill, and they picked the star player from whatever team. Green from Triumph, I think. That's the Kevin Garnett team. And like, I've actually seen him play quite a bit because, been stuck in LA through coronavirus, and there was a lot of Counter-Strike 24/7 until the player break, so I always had the games on in the background, and he's just playing super well. So he himself the spot right there, but that's like another example of, you just pick the most skill, that there's going to be a way to make all that work and make the pieces fit together. I will say that there's one upside to the stacking skill on a roster approach, regardless of like what the implications are and how the pieces fit together and teamwork, etc. Which is that, like, all else equal, you'd always rather have the Houston Rockets approach, which is that you have super high variance because at least you have a shot down. If you're just consistently worse, like nobody else in the West the last couple of years, just to go back to basketball, is beating Golden State. Rockets, like, they're like a couple of threes away from knocking them down, even the CP3 out in Game 7 a couple of years ago. And that's because they understand that, like, if you're worse, if you play a 100-game series, you're always losing, then you just have to make it more random. And I think if you have more skill, then, like, yeah, it could go wrong, could go horribly wrong because you don't have the basics of team play, etc. But at the same time, you also have chances of winning. And, people generally would prefer to win a big one every now and then rather than always make top 4. There's, good examples.
This is what we have been waiting for.
This way, the analogy would be this. There's a reason why playing the national lottery is more appealing to some people than the scratch ticket, even though they might cost the same, you have a way higher chance of getting the scratch ticket. That's weird. So in similar fashion, yeah, like, put it this way, one of the reasons why oftentimes when I like a team because they remind me of 1.6, like MSL teams are an obvious example, or even maybe the Mouse Sports team that Carrigan has now, because I always say the downside of having just enough skill is when some of your players are off their game, you're just never going to win. You just can't win the tournament. Whereas, as we're saying, like, Team Liquid's a good example. I mean, I'm amazed they haven't won anything since that player break, but they almost feel like they could have tripped over and won a tournament if things had gone right. I mean, EG did, right? Similar kind of team. So, yeah, I'm with you. In that sense, that is also another strategy if you aren't the #1 team, is to just stack that approach and more variance, yeah. And definitely some CSGO teams have done it. This video is kindly supported by Pronovo, Things, Spencer Green, Salico, Dean Tanglis, Jack Hanna, Hades, Jensen Go, the Puyallup Tribe, J-Dubs, Xander Rao, and a special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you'd like to put a question to me in my monthly video Q&A. Do you want teasers for my upcoming content? Or maybe to even so put your money where your mouth is and join the Illuminati today in the Patreon link in the description box below.
Absolute chaos here towards middle as I can't find anything, but quite a statue continues to apply pressure. Knife kill coming in. You do love to see that
Grenade! I'm waiting here. Throwing a flashbang!
They need a hero right now, otherwise this is going to be another box.
Grenade out!
Cyber's going to be there trying to pick it up. Second kill. And somehow turns it. Oh, and finally, Circus going to be there. 14 seconds left. Behind the pillar waiting, and he's going to be so quick. That's the quad kill. Saiwu saving them.
It really was, especially when he looked away, but this one should be a coin flip. It's going to be an easy kill for Zaiwu.
A good double kill for him, and now it's all on Saiwu here. 14 seconds left. Oh no, the bomb plant. It might be right in front. So, oh my god! He lines it up and shuts it down! And now we just need to wait. They can't plant the bomb anymore, Terry.
Yes,
There's no time. He does get it in the last possible second. And Saiwu is back for more. Looking for him. Already with the triple. Just needs one more click of that scope, and Tarek is hiding behind Tetris. Saiwu knows. You've never seen anything like it.
Well, Snappy and Borup. And a 2-on-5. Now Borup is in backside. Great work. The bomb actually fumbled away into his possession, and he stays alive even longer. The youngster Borup looking great right now in the pistol. Trying his best to give away as little as possible, and there's the initial headshot. Fine. Now just one more shot needed on the Snatchy in order to close out here. Snatchy knows he's got to be cautious as well, but Borup gets it done. It's the ace from him to bring his team back into the game and give them the pistol.
So many men, no flashbang whatsoever, but the cleanup will be quite nice. And the threat's been eliminated. Oh my god, what the hell was that? What in the blazes was that?
Leave Salu all alone. 25 seconds left.